The moment my wife, Claire, told me she was pregnant, it felt like time froze. Her face lit up with an uncharacteristic glow as she handed me the pregnancy test stick, its 2 pink lines glaring back at me like a neon sign announcing the biggest change in our lives. My heart raced, not out of excitement, but from sheer disbelief. We had been trying for months, years even, and every failed attempt left us both feeling defeated. Yet here we were, staring at what seemed like a miracle. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice trembling. Claire nodded enthusiastically, tears welling up in her eyes. "I can't believe it either. But it's real this time, David. It's finally happening." Her joy was contagious, and despite my initial shock, I found myself smiling back at her. For weeks leading up to that day, Claire had hinted about something big being on the horizon. She'd been unusually secretive, disappearing into her room or keeping her phone close by whenever I entered the room. At first, I thought nothing of it. People need their space sometimes. But now, looking back, those moments seem suspicious, like breadcrumbs leading to a truth I wasn't ready to uncover yet. We celebrated that evening over dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. Claire ordered her usual Caesar salad, while I indulged in a hearty plate of pasta. As we clinked glasses filled with sparkling cider, she claimed champagne wasn't safe during pregnancy. I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope wash over me. Maybe things were turning around for us after all. But deep down, there was another emotion lurking beneath the surface. Fear. Fear of responsibility. Fear of failure. Fear of losing the life we'd built together. And though I tried to push these thoughts aside, they lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. Over the next few days, everything changed. Claire began acting differently, more cautious, more nurturing. She started taking prenatal vitamins religiously, reading books about parenting, and attending online support groups for expectant mothers. While part of me admired her dedication, another part wondered if she was preparing too much, almost obsessively so. And then came the doctor's appointment, the one where everything would supposedly be confirmed. That morning, Claire woke up early, carefully applying makeup before slipping into a loose-fitting sundress. She fidgeted nervously in the car ride over, biting her nails until they bled. When we arrived at the clinic, she clung tightly to my hand, her knuckles white against mine. As we sat in the waiting room, surrounded by other couples who looked just as anxious as we did, I glanced at Claire. There was something different about her today, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Was it the way she avoided eye contact, or how she kept glancing at her phone every few seconds? When the nurse called us back, Claire stood quickly, pulling me along with her. The examination room smelled sterile, the walls adorned with cheerful posters of babies and animals. Dr. Patel greeted us warmly, her clipboard in hand. "So," she said, flipping through some papers, "let's confirm your pregnancy and discuss your options moving forward." Claire smiled brightly, her voice trembling slightly. "Yes, please. This is such exciting news." Dr. Patel nodded, gesturing for Claire to lie down on the examination table. As the ultrasound machine whirred to life, I held Claire's hand tighter, anticipation building inside me. Would we hear a heartbeat? See a tiny flicker of movement on the screen? But when the image appeared, it wasn't what I expected. Instead of seeing the unmistakable shape of a fetus, the screen showed nothing, just static and shadows. "What does this mean?" I asked, confusion clouding my voice. Dr. Patel frowned, squinting at the monitor. "Well, based on this scan, I don't see any signs of a viable pregnancy. Have you experienced any symptoms recently?" Claire hesitated, her smile faltering for the first time since she'd given me the positive test result. Yes. Morning sickness, fatigue, cravings." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "Those could be caused by several factors unrelated to pregnancy. Let's run some blood tests to confirm. In the meantime, try not to worry too much." As we left the office, silence hung heavily between us. Claire walked briskly ahead, her shoulders stiff and her expression unreadable. By the time we got home, I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't want to confront her, not yet. After all, maybe the ultrasound technician made a mistake. Maybe the baby was simply too small to detect. Or maybe, just maybe, Claire wasn't telling me the whole truth. Over the following weeks, cracks began to form in our relationship, subtle fractures that widened with each passing day. Claire continued to act as though everything was fine, maintaining her facade of impending motherhood. She decorated the nursery, bought adorable onesies, and attended weekly yoga classes designed specifically for pregnant women. Meanwhile, I grew increasingly uneasy, unable to shake off the nagging suspicion that something was amiss. One evening, while Claire was out shopping for maternity clothes, I decided to investigate further. It started innocently enough. I opened her laptop, intending to check her email for updates regarding the upcoming baby shower. But as I scrolled through her inbox, I stumbled upon something unexpected. Dozens of emails exchanged between Claire and someone named Dr. Anderson. At first, I assumed Dr. Anderson was another healthcare professional involved in her care. But as I read deeper into the correspondence, alarm bells rang louder in my head. These weren't medical consultations. They were appointments scheduled for fertility treatments, artificial insemination procedures, hormone injections. My stomach churned as I pieced together the puzzle. If Claire had undergone these treatments, why hadn't she told me? Why go through such lengths without involving me in the process? More importantly, why pretend to be naturally pregnant when clearly that wasn't the case? Before I could delve further, Claire returned home, carrying bags full of colorful outfits meant for our unborn child. Her cheerful demeanor clashed sharply with the turmoil brewing within me. Guilt gnawed at my conscience for snooping, but curiosity outweighed it. I needed answers, answers only Claire could provide. That night, after putting away the groceries, I approached her cautiously. "Hey, Claire, can we talk?" She looked up from folding laundry, her brow furrowing slightly. "Of course. What's wrong?" Taking a deep breath, I chose my words carefully. "I found some emails earlier about fertility treatments. Care to explain?" For a brief moment, her mask slipped, revealing panic beneath her composed exterior. Then, just as quickly, she regained control, forcing a weak smile onto her lips. "Oh, that. Yes, I wanted to surprise you. Thought it might increase our chances of conceiving naturally. But you never mentioned anything to me," I countered, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. "Why keep it secret?" Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks as she sank onto the couch. "Because I was scared, David. Scared that if I told you, you'd lose hope. You've always been skeptical about us having kids, and I didn't want to give you another reason to doubt us." Her admission hit me hard, stirring conflicting emotions within me. On one hand, I understood her fears. Our struggles with infertility had taken a toll on both of us. On the other hand, her secrecy felt like betrayal, eroding the trust we'd worked so hard to build. "I appreciate your intentions," I said slowly, choosing each word deliberately. "But hiding something this important doesn't solve anything. If anything, it makes it worse." Claire wiped her tears, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want me to say? That I panicked? That I lied because I thought it would make you happy? Because it's true. I did all of this for us, for you." Her honesty stung, cutting deeper than any argument ever could. For years, I'd prided myself on being supportive, patient, understanding. Yet faced with this revelation, I realized how little I truly knew about Claire, or about our marriage. In the days that followed, tensions simmered beneath the surface of our once stable household. Conversations became strained, punctuated by awkward silences and unanswered questions. Claire retreated further into herself, spending hours locked away in the bedroom or scrolling endlessly on her phone. Meanwhile, I wrestled with my own emotions, torn between anger and empathy. It wasn't long before another discovery shattered whatever fragile peace remained between us. One afternoon, while searching for a misplaced document, I accidentally knocked over a box tucked away in the corner of our storage closet. Inside, I found remnants of Claire's past, a collection of old photographs, letters, and keepsakes from before we met. Among them lay a crumpled ultrasound printout dated several years prior. Curious, I unfolded it, studying the grainy black and white image. Unlike the recent scans showing empty voids, this one displayed clear outlines, a fetal profile unmistakably present. Stunned, I stared at the paper, my mind racing. Could it be possible that Claire had been pregnant before? Had she miscarried, choosing not to share this painful experience with me? Or was there another explanation entirely? Unable to contain my curiosity, I confronted her that evening. This time, however, Claire didn't cry or offer excuses. Instead, she sat rigidly on the edge of the bed, her jaw clenched and her gaze fixed firmly on the floor. "You deserve to know the truth," she began, her voice steady yet tinged with sorrow. "Years ago, before we met, I was indeed pregnant. But it wasn't planned. It happened unexpectedly with someone I barely knew. When I discovered the pregnancy, I panicked. Abortion wasn't an option for me, so I carried the baby to term. Only, the child didn't survive birth." Her confession left me reeling, grappling with waves of conflicting emotions. Compassion warred with betrayal. Understanding clashed with hurt. How could she have kept such a monumental event hidden from me? And why bring it up now, after all this time? "I never intended to deceive you," she continued, her voice breaking. "But when we started struggling to conceive, memories resurfaced, memories I thought I'd buried forever. I guess part of me hoped reliving the experience, even falsely, would ease the pain." Hearing her admit this vulnerability broke something inside me. Here was a woman I loved deeply, yet barely recognized anymore. A woman burdened by secrets and regrets, desperate to hold onto a semblance of normalcy. And in attempting to protect our relationship, she'd inadvertently damaged it beyond repair. By the end of that week, it became clear that our marriage couldn't survive the weight of deception and mistrust. Despite our shared history and mutual affection, the foundation of our bond had crumbled irreparably. Neither of us spoke openly about separation, but the decision loomed heavy between us, unspoken yet undeniable. On a crisp autumn morning, I packed a suitcase, leaving behind familiar comforts and stepping into uncertainty. Claire watched silently from the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. No dramatic declarations or heartfelt pleas for forgiveness passed between us. Only quiet acceptance of the inevitable. Driving away from the house we'd built together, I allowed myself a single glance in the rear-view mirror. Through the window, Claire stood motionless, her silhouette framed against the backdrop of falling leaves. For a fleeting instant, I imagined turning back, sweeping her into my arms, and promising to rebuild what we'd lost. But reality intruded swiftly, reminding me that some bridges are better left burned. Now, months later, I find myself reflecting on the journey that brought me here. Life without Claire feels foreign, yet strangely liberating. Each day presents new challenges, new opportunities to redefine myself outside the confines of our broken partnership. Yet amidst the healing process, one question lingers persistently. What happens next? Only time will tell. Time passed slowly, each day blending into the next as I navigated this unfamiliar terrain of solitude. The absence of Claire's presence in the house created an eerie silence, one that echoed through the empty rooms and corridors. Objects that once held significance now seemed hollow, their meaning stripped away by the dissolution of our marriage. The photo frames displaying happier times gathered dust, the laughter captured in those images reduced to mere echoes of a life that no longer existed. At first, the adjustment was difficult. Simple tasks, like cooking dinner or running errands, suddenly required more effort because they lacked the shared purpose they once had. Every trip to the grocery store reminded me of the countless times we'd argued over which brand of cereal to buy, or whether organic produce was worth the extra cost. Those trivial disagreements now felt precious, markers of a connection that I had taken for granted. Work became both a refuge and a reminder of what I had lost. Colleagues noticed the change in me, offering sympathetic smiles or subtle inquiries about how I was holding up. Some even shared stories of their own struggles with relationships, lending perspective to my situation. Their words helped, providing comfort in knowing I wasn't alone in facing such challenges. Still, there were moments when the loneliness crept in, uninvited and relentless, making me question whether walking away had truly been the right choice. Despite the pain, I began to notice subtle improvements in my mental state. Without the constant tension and unresolved conflicts weighing me down, I found myself thinking more clearly, approaching problems with renewed focus. Old hobbies resurfaced. Books I had abandoned mid-read, musical instruments gathering cobwebs in the corner of the living room, all offered outlets for creativity and self-expression. For the first time in years, I felt like I was rediscovering parts of myself that had been overshadowed by the demands of maintaining a troubled marriage. Yet, even as I embraced this newfound independence, I couldn't escape the lingering questions about Claire. What had driven her to fake a pregnancy? Was it desperation, or something deeper? And how much of what I thought I knew about her was rooted in reality, rather than assumptions shaped by years of familiarity? These thoughts led me down paths I hadn't considered before. Perhaps Claire's actions weren't solely motivated by a desire to keep me. Maybe they stemmed from a place of profound insecurity, born out of fear of inadequacy or abandonment. After all, our relationship hadn't been perfect. We both carried baggage into it, expectations that often clashed with reality. Could her deception have been a cry for help, a desperate attempt to cling to something stable amidst the chaos? If that were true, did it absolve her of responsibility? Did it excuse the betrayal I had felt upon discovering the truth? These questions haunted me, refusing easy answers. They forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about my own role in the breakdown of our marriage. Had I been blind to the signs, too focused on my own needs to notice hers? Or was I merely a victim caught in circumstances beyond my control? The answers eluded me, but the process of seeking them brought clarity nonetheless. I realized that love, in its purest form, requires honesty and vulnerability. Without trust, even the strongest bonds can fracture under pressure. Our marriage had failed not because we didn't care for each other, but because we stopped communicating honestly. We let fear dictate our choices, allowing misunderstandings to fester until they consumed us. This realization didn't erase the pain, but it softened the edges. It allowed me to view Claire not as an adversary, but as a fellow traveler navigating the complexities of life. Though we had parted ways, I hoped she found peace in her journey, just as I sought it in mine. Months turned into seasons, and eventually years. During this time, I rebuilt my life piece by piece, creating a new narrative free from the constraints of our shared past. New friendships blossomed, bringing laughter and companionship into spaces once dominated by silence. Career advancements provided a sense of accomplishment, proving that growth was still possible even after setbacks. Still, memories of Claire lingered, surfacing unexpectedly during quiet moments. A song on the radio, a scent wafting through the air, or a familiar phrase spoken by someone else, all served as reminders of the life we had once shared. At first, these recollections brought sharp pangs of nostalgia, but over time, they transformed into gentle acknowledgments of what had been. Rather than dwell on regret, I chose to honor those experiences as part of my story, acknowledging their impact without letting them define me. Occasionally, I wondered about Claire. Where was she now? How was she coping with the aftermath of our separation? Had she moved on, finding happiness with someone else? Or was she still grappling with the same demons that had plagued us both? These musings never led to concrete conclusions, but they reinforced my belief in the importance of closure. Whatever path she chose, I wished her well, hoping she found the peace and fulfillment she deserved. One day, nearly 3 years after leaving, I received a letter in the mail. Its handwriting was unfamiliar, yet somehow familiar, evoking a strange mix of curiosity and apprehension. Enclosed within was a note written in Claire's unmistakable script. David, I hope this finds you well. Writing this letter has been harder than I anticipated, but I feel compelled to reach out after all this time. Life has been challenging for me since we parted ways. The guilt of what I did weighed heavily on my heart, making it difficult to move forward. Over time, however, I've come to understand that my actions stemmed from fear. Fear of losing you, fear of failing as a partner, fear of confronting the truth about myself. Since then, I've done a lot of soul-searching. Therapy helped me unpack the layers of insecurity and shame that drove me to deceive you. Along the way, I've learned to forgive myself, though I recognize that doesn't absolve me of the pain I caused you. For that, I am truly sorry. I write this not to seek redemption, but to express gratitude for the love we shared, for the lessons we taught each other, and for the courage you demonstrated in walking away. Your decision freed me to confront my own flaws and grow into the person I strive to be today. Wherever you are in your journey, I hope you find joy and fulfillment. You deserve nothing less. With sincerity, Claire. Reading her words, I felt a wave of emotions, sadness, relief, and perhaps most surprisingly, forgiveness. Claire's honesty, though delayed, resonated deeply with me. It validated my suspicions while offering closure I hadn't realized I needed. Her acknowledgement of her mistakes, coupled with her willingness to take responsibility, bridged the gap between us in a way nothing else could. After setting the letter aside, I reflected on its implications. Did this mean reconciliation was possible? Or was it simply a gesture of closure, meant to release us both from the burdens of the past? Either way, I knew one thing for certain. Our story, though far from perfect, had taught me invaluable lessons about love, trust, and resilience. Years later, I sit in a quiet cafe, sipping coffee and watching the world go by. The scars of our separation remain, faint but visible, reminders of the strength it took to endure. Yet, alongside them exists a profound sense of gratitude for the love we once shared, for the challenges that shaped me, and for the courage to walk away when necessary. Life moves forward, constantly evolving, presenting new opportunities and challenges at every turn. Though the road ahead remains uncertain, I approach it with optimism, knowing that growth often arises from adversity. And somewhere in the vast expanse of existence, I imagine Claire doing the same, forging her own path with the same determination and grace that once defined our union. For now, the chapter of our lives together has closed. But the book of our individual journeys continues, written with every step we take toward becoming the best versions of ourselves.